welcome to the Sugar and Spikes podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs, side hustlers, and anyone ready to uplevel their career in their own damn way. I'm Des. I'm a life coach for women who get that having it all sometimes means having to balance the good and the bad, the sugar and the spikes, and all the in-between.
And I'm Tammy. I'm a compassionate yet BS-free therapist, and I work with clients to help them build skills to lead kick-ass lives.
Between the two of us, we have 4 master's degrees and thousands of hours helping people develop balance, confidence, and clarity on their terms. So let's get started. Hi, everyone. Oh my god, I've been dying for this episode for so long. Okay.
I know, I think we talked about this like 2 months ago?
No. So, let's just kind of, really acknowledge the situation, all right? So, our podcast is us.
It is us.
And recently, we've taken to doing a lot of interviews.
Yeah.
Which has been great. So I want it noted for all of society to hear. Everybody that we have on the show, we fully believe in, we fully support. Nothing negative to say about any of our guests.
No, I've really enjoyed, getting to speak with them and getting to know them and what they do and who they stand for, what they stand for.
Yeah. And I get folks kind of pitching me occasionally, hey, I want to be on your podcast, which is cool. I'm not opposed to any of that. I love having this platform that people are connecting with. Fabulous. And because we live in the world of Tammy and I have been talking, and hashtag keeping it real, we've been a bit burnt out.
Yeah, it's just a whole different thing doing interviews,
Mm-hmm.
It's not just talking to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the last few weeks, we've been traveling, we've had interviews, we've been exhausted because life, we've both had personal drama and messes going on.
Yeah, I was out of town for a few days.
And it's been so long since we've had a chat.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm so stupid excited about it.
I know. I'm this has been a long time coming. It's just something we haven't done in a while. And I look forward to it. It's kind of the highlight of my week. So when we don't do it, I'm oh,
yeah,
that didn't happen this week.
So I guess you guys are wondering what it is we're chatting about this week.
Yeah. So what are we chatting about this week?
Well, we're chatting about something that came up on one of our interviews. Imagine that, right? So, fun fact, we don't just do an interview and stop thinking about it.
My brain doesn't work that way.
No, we've all seen the memes of obsessively thinking about something awkward that was said and stuff. We're thinking about things, and when folks say things, it sparks stuff.
Absolutely.
And all of that being said, today, and especially I feel especially after the week I've had, and I think maybe you've had, the life that we both live.
Yeah.
This idea of balance. It's something we've kind of talked about.
Not just any kind of balance, though, right? Work-life balance.
Which I've consistently said is kind of bullshit, because I've been team work-life integration.
Yeah, I think integration is a better word for it.
But so, both work-life balance and work-life integration bring this idea of kind of 50-50, or things like one thing or the other and things like that. And I really think one of the best examples or definitions or visualizations of work-life balance I've ever heard was your thing with the tightrope.
With a gymnast?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So one thing I like to talk about with clients is balance. We think of balance kind of in this teeter-totter way, right? Where it's 50-50 right in the middle.
Yeah, and this thing, this comes about because I've seen a lot of postings and stuff recently, especially recently, around this whole idea of work-life balance is bullshit and all of these things, and you can't do things 50-50 and blah, 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 you have to go all in. And that's bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a couple different arguments. You can say, well, there is work-life balance and that doesn't mean 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
You can say that there isn't work-life balance, that you can't really compartmentalize life that way.
Mm-hmm.
You can say that there's work, friends, self and family and divided into
Mm-hmm.
quadrants. I think there's lots of arguments you can make that it's kind of this oversimplified idea that this compartment that is work and this compartment that is life are somehow balanced 50-50.
Yeah.
The way that I kind of like to approach it is that it doesn't have to be 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of a gymnast, right? If it was 50-50, they'd only be able to balance in one way. They could do
Mm-hmm.
like a handstand and that's it.
Yeah, or like standing on your 2 feet, which no one's impressed.
Right. Ooh, good
fancy.
on you. So, but if you think about how gymnasts balance, like if you think about the balance beam or you think about how they can lean really far over and still be balanced, they can balance on one hand, they can like there's just all these different ways they can find balance. And so if you take that idea and apply it to this idea of balance in your life, then you can see it doesn't have to be 50-50.
Yeah. And like it makes me think of yoga and stuff. Like when like when you're doing the like pyramid thing with just like your legs like spread apart and just like stand like 2 feet on the ground still versus like tree pose and then flopping your arms around like
crow or scorpion. Yeah, like the more complicated pose. Yeah.
No one's staring at the chick doing warrior being like, oh, that's really impressive balance. Warrior is a good pose. I like it. I'm a fan. But like it's not gonna turn any heads.
Yeah, so I think another idea is that like the idea of balance seems to be this goal, right? Like societally speaking, we've turned it into this goal. Like you achieve balance and you've achieved balance. But balance is more of a long game.
Yes.
Rather than just we get to the goal. So I like to talk about it being more of a process than a destination.
Yeah, like very much a journey and like I like to think of it as navigating.
Yeah.
One thing that's come up in my mind recently has been like this idea of like a navigation system. And like sometimes it's like a super straight shot and it's easy. And then other times like things come up and you have to take those like reroutes and stuff like that. And it's just, and you're still like on the right track.
Yeah. Cause I think, a lot of times I think people have this idea of what work-life balance should be. I'm using air quotes, should be. Like we should, quote unquote, all be able to exercise and eat right and go to yoga class and only work till a certain hour and then turn off our phones and then be perfect parents and all of this stuff. But really, I mean, it's very individual what balance looks like for people. And I thought something that might be kind of interesting would be to kind of compare and contrast how it might look different for you and me because we kind of have very different lives.
Yeah. So one thing that is interesting, like now that you bring it up. So I have a planner and some of you guys may know that I live and die by a paper planner.
Yeah.
And I use the God, if you guys have been following us for a minute, you're gonna laugh. But I use the law of attraction one because Kara.
You do?
Hold on. Because Kara promoted it and it looked really cool and it gets to all the things I want and it makes me think about things.
It is pretty.
Right? It's super cute. It has...
Mine's super plain. But of course it would be that way, right? I have a super plain planner.
I like that. So it has like reflect on your month. And guys, like I'll put pictures of this on whatever fucking medium you want, like Facebook.
We'll put pictures of it somewhere.
It'll be around. So fun fact, like side note, Sugar and Spikes actually has a Facebook page because Facebook was like, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do this.
It bullied you into it, Des.
Yeah. So maybe the planner will be like the official like Sugar and Spikes like Facebook page launch. But so this law of attraction planner, all this is to say, it's not like fully like what you
Oh, yeah. Yours is way more detailed than mine.
It's not our beef with the law of attraction.
No.
What I'm getting to is it has this positive habit maker thing.
Okay.
And it starts off with like gratitude / love, meditate, exercise, and then there's space to write your own. And this week I've been super diligent. Not even knowing we were recording this podcast this week, but I've been like super diligent.
You're like, oh, we have to do the balance podcast this week. Now I understand.
No. Isn't it funny how things work out? What I've noticed is that every day I can do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can do 6 out of 8 things.
6 out of 8 things?
6 out of 8 things.
Nice. Very nice.
For like positive habits. There's not been one day this week that I've hit it all or abandoned all of it.
Nice. So you weren't all or nothing.
Exactly.
You were somewhere in the middle.
And there's only one slot that's just like fully neglected.
It's blank. For those things that come up where you have to be flexible.
It's meditation.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, who needs that?
Well, also, if you think about it, so I think about my schedule. Right. I have a much simpler planner.
Mm-hmm. I love that we have our planners out for this podcast.
It's just the day with a bunch of hours on it.
Yeah.
So, for example, I worked 4.5 hours on Monday, but I worked 10 hours the rest of the week. So my balance on the day that I worked 4 hours looks very different than the days that I worked 10 hours and had an hour and a half drive.
Yeah.
Right. So like on the day that I worked 4.5 hours, I actually got up, I exercised, I had a nice breakfast. I kind of took some time for myself.
Yeah.
I was actually alone in my house, which I think is the first
It's
time
unheard of. It's
that has happened since we
of.
got here, since we moved here. So that day and the things that I did and the way that I used my time was very different than, let's say, Thursday, where I was working until 7 o'clock at night and then I had an hour and a half drive home.
Yeah.
So that looks very different. And that's okay.
Yeah. And the thing is like, so I've been on Insta lately and I've been spending a lot of time on my Insta stories. And guys, if you are not following me on my Insta stories, you're missing out.
So much.
I'm at Des W Ms MBA if you feel like following me. There's some good shit. But I've been doing my Insta stories this week because I've been really focusing on it, and you know I really like the way you can tell stories through that.
Yeah.
And all this week up until today, I've been snapping pictures like in bed working, like 7 a.m. I'm up, so I think maybe some of you guys know, but a lot of you guys may not know. I don't use an alarm. I'm super privileged.
Check your privilege, Des.
I'm super fucking privileged in that I don't have to use an alarm. And
Can't believe you just said that.
And
I don't use an alarm, everybody.
And I've been sharing what that looks like in terms of like entrepreneurship and everything. So Monday through Thursday, it's been pictures of me and my dog and my computer, like in bed, like working, you know? So like, yeah, I don't have an alarm and I wake up at 7 a.m. and I'm like fucking working. Like I'm going for it. I don't like get up and have time to myself. I don't like work. I wake up and I go. Like I spend 2 to 3 hours doing things, getting out there, making shit happen.
Okay.
So a lot of it is like I wake up and I'm fucking on. Today, on Friday, even though I know we release on Tuesday, on this lovely Friday, I woke up and was like, I can't. I don't want to say I'm burnt out because I feel like burnout means a different thing.
Yeah.
But I woke up and I was just like, I've gone hard. I've done these things. I need something back.
Yeah, so you took that time.
Well, and it wasn't even necessarily like I took me time because, and this goes into like the whole idea of work-life integration. Like as an entrepreneur, like it's really hard to let go of like any moment that isn't used for the business.
Yeah.
Like I can't describe like how hard that is.
Well, I mean, that's that true integration, right? Where your work is your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like in that moment I was like, I couldn't do what I'd been doing this week. Like I couldn't do that. I was done. I woke up with a headache. I woke up in a mood. There were tech issues, like all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, what do I do in this situation? Like, I don't just want to lay here doing nothing. I'm going to feel shitty about it. It's going to piss me off. I'm going to be in a bad mood. That's going to fuck up my day.
Yeah.
That's not good. And I can't, like, I don't have it in me to do what I've been doing. So what do I do? So I looked for different ways, and not to leave y'all hanging, that looked like kind of feeding the entrepreneur business thing in terms of like personal development and growth. So I was watching some trainings and stuff that I'd paid for it. I was doing something that like I could see directly connected to the business in an objective manner, and it did not require producing content.
And that's okay, right? So that goes back to like something we've talked about before, which is like when you just can't do it that day, like what can you commit to? And then you do that.
And that's balance. Like that's the standing on one toe and making the rest of it like work together.
Yeah, because there's times when you do have to go hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's times when you're consumed by work from the minute you get up till the minute you go to bed, and that may be way later than you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, if you shift the idea of balance from short term to a more long term kind of vision, then you can see that in the short you can go really hard and then kind of move back into something that's paced for like sustainability in the end.
And I think where so many people fall, and I know I do this too, is the days, the weeks that you're going hard, that like everything is going so good and you're just like, you're fucking on it. There's this like false sense of security in that's how it can be. Like, well, I went that hard for 2 weeks. I went that hard for a month. I did that, and I'm never going to stop doing that. And then that's where really the black and white thinking comes in, and that doesn't work. Like,
yeah, because balance is all about making adjustments, right? So if you just hit the gas and never, ever, 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 ever hit the brake or slow down,
hit something.
You're gonna hit something eventually, right? That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of take your foot off the pedal a little bit, or maybe hit the brakes here and there, then you can sustain that over your journey, right?
Well, if we're using the whole like driving thing, then the thing is like going full speed doesn't account for the fact that life throws things at you. Like it like this time, like today, my example, like life didn't throw anything at me, but sometimes it does.
Well, it kind of did.
Kind of.
You woke up in a mood and you were just like, I can't do it today.
I was tired.
I think that's life saying, hey, hang on a minute.
It's a turn. Like you can't take turns without letting off the gas.
Right.
Or else you fucking crash.
Right.
Like you can't account for adjustments unless you slow down.
Yeah.
Which is something that I think so many people forget about, is like going. And whatever life throws at me, I got it. I mean, and like you're going to need to readjust.
At some point, right? And that also doesn't mean this idea of like, I read this article where it was about I can't remember who she was, but she was quite an up-and-coming entrepreneur, and she was like, I just got rid of the idea that there's any balance in my life. My whole life is dedicated to my work. I'm like, well, you kind of look like you probably go to the gym, and you
right,
and you kind of look like you're probably getting at least a decent amount of sleep.
I mean, you look pretty put together.
Yeah. So like I'm hypothesizing, and I could be wrong, that there are things you're doing.
Yeah.
But that's more of that quadrant idea, right? So there's work, and then life can kind of be broken up into however many quadrants you want. Maybe for her, it was work and some self-care.
Yeah.
And that was how she found balance in her life. But I think this idea that there was no balance is a little bit of a limited view, and that's not really totally accurate.
Yeah. I've seen something, and I'm really going to butcher it, and I wish I could Google it because it makes so much sense. it makes so much sense talked about appropriately, and I'm going to get it wrong. But it's this idea of like, there are 4 kind of key things going on in life, like work, family, friendships, and exercise. Like let's roll with that.
self-care. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, quadrants. That's what I mean by quadrants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you get 3. Which one do you drop? So my experience has been that for the most part, like I'm not saying it's like 33.33 for all.
Yeah.
For like those key ones. I'm not saying that, but it's going to be like 30 something, 30 something, 30 something, 2%.
Okay.
You know, like I think about my life, I think about like your life. It's very much like something gets very little attention.
That's fair.
And my whole thing, like what I work with clients on all the time, is like this idea of having it all is kind of bullshit, because having it all comes with a lot of bullshit. So it's not creating and developing this life that like you think you should have, but what is the life that you really want? And if we really stop and think about it, like if we really sit down and get honest and direct with ourselves and cut the bullshit, there are 2, maybe 3 things in life that we really want. It's not this idea of like juggling 5 or 6 things in the air and calling it good. Like we have a handful of main focuses.
Sure. I can roll with that. I mean, I think about my life, right? So I have a 40-hour-a-week job.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
I also take care of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
I have a dog.
Mm-hmm.
I have this as a second job.
and we keep her working.
And I'm in school.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about all of those things, I'm doing quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of demands on my time.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to do the best I can with the recognition that you have to prioritize some days for some, like I was just out of town for 2
Mm-hmm.
days. It wasn't with my kids for that amount of time. I couldn't be. I talked to them on the phone, and did the best I could, but I could not be there for that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and can I call you on something?
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're in school. The deal is
Yeah.
like you're getting credit for it.
It's
and
true.
It's lumped into your 40. Like
It is lumped in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
But there is additional things I have to do, and I'm being evaluated. So I count it not as in I'm in classes, but there are still additional things that I have to do. I'm not just working like 9 to 5 and going
and
home.
then it's done.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure our listeners aren't like she's working 40 hours a week and then going
And then
to
going to
like
classes.
15 credit hours of classes.
Oh my
No.
goodness. No.
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 I just wanted to kind of
That's
clarify
fair.
that. And this idea of like really if you were to boil it down.
Yeah.
Like because your school credits and stuff kind of lump into something else. If you were to truly boil it down, it ends up to being a handful of things.
That's fair.
Not this breadth.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm like.
And if you had to pick the thing
Yeah.
of mine that got the least attention,
Mhm.
it would be my self-care. I'm totally open about that. Like I do the best I can, and there are just limits on my time. Like I would love to be able to exercise. I had a short day that one Monday for a lot of reasons, but just kind of, it was a random thing. And I did fit some exercise in because I could do it in the morning, not at 5:30 in the morning. I'm not getting up at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
But I could exercise. But when I'm working and I start work, I leave for work at 7 and I don't get home till 8.
Yeah.
Like there's no exercise happening for me in that day because
Yeah.
I'm just too tired. So I have to find self-care in like these other ways. But
ways.
But I also recognize that I don't have the time to devote to it that someone else who maybe doesn't have all these demands on their time would. You know what I mean?
And like, so my sacrifice or like flex in all of this is the housework, like the home stuff. I don't do.
Fair.
Like Tammy can tell you if you walked into my kitchen right now. Her laugh is the kindest thing that could be said about the kitchen situation. But that's because I work. Like I have a full-time job. I'm building like another business that I'm fucking obsessed with. Like everybody can tell you that that's all I think
It's
about.
so true.
And then I maybe take an hour out of my day to work out.
Yeah. So,
and I begrudgingly give my dog some time, but that's it.
Begrudgingly? Really? I don't think so. He demands time.
He demands it.
Yeah, so like self-care isn't where you sacrifice, right? So you talked about having like some core things where one gets less attention. For you, it's not self-care.
Yeah.
It's kind of housework and other kinds of things.
It's the home maintenance piece.
Yes.
Like, I don't cook. Tammy cooks. This is, I think, one of the most clear things, like, in terms of like sacrifice. Like, so I will not sacrifice like my hour of working out. Tammy makes sure that she cooks every night, I think.
Every night.
And I'm like, oh, fuck that, no.
Yeah.
Like, I am not above ordering out 7 days a week.
Right, so I don't do that.
Yeah.
I maybe order out, I think, once or twice a week, maybe. But I try to make it a point to cook my meals. Yeah.
Which I feel like for both of us, those are things that, I don't want to say if we could, we would, but like, if we could have this life of we get everything, right?
Yeah.
Then I'd be cooking.
I'd be exercising.
There'd be more things.
Yeah.
You know? So like these people that go around and say you can have everything you want, that's true.
But maybe not all at the levels you want. Maybe
you need to know what you want and how bad you want it.
Yeah.
You know? Because like, yeah, I could want a lot of fucking things, but how bad do I want it?
Yeah. So like I agree with what you're saying. Like you have to boil it down and you have to figure it out and you have to figure out like what are my absolutes have to have versus what are my nice to have versus what would be kind of rainbows and unicorns to have, right? And make priorities in that way.
Well, and I think it ties back to this idea of like sacrifice versus choice. Like there's so many people that are like, you don't have to choose. You don't have to choose. Like in this life, you can have everything you want. You don't have to choose. And I'm like, I mean, you do.
You do.
Especially since these folks that like say that, I'm looking at their lives and I'm like, you don't quite have quote unquote all. You know, and I'm not going to place any judgments. I'm not going to go any further than that. But I'm just saying, like, if you put a critical eye to like a personality's life, there's some things that it's kind of easy to see that folks don't have in terms of societal expectations.
Sure.
And so like, yeah, you don't have to choose if you know what you want.
Yeah, or you can make the conscious choices to have those things and kind of let the rest fall by the wayside, right?
Yeah, because we have this idea that like choosing means sacrifice, and that's not necessarily true.
Yeah. Because
like going back to the cooking thing, and it's easy, I feel like it's an easy, somewhat neutral thing to talk about. Like my identity isn't wrapped up in cooking.
Yeah.
And that's not like, yeah, it'd be nice. Like I'd really like that. But I don't feel like I'm sacrificing any part of myself by not doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm choosing to not doing it. So I'm making this choice and I'm not sacrificing.
Right. Whereas for me, it's much more important, a much more like priority in my life to do those things. It's something I really get enjoyment out of and I really like it.
Yeah.
And so I make the conscientious choice to say, okay, if I have to choose between cooking and exercise because I only have enough energy to do one of those things, I'm going to choose cooking because that is more important to me.
Yeah. And like I think the thing is like if you're faced with something and it feels hard to give up, then it's time to like spend a moment thinking about like, well, do I feel like I'm sacrificing? What do I feel like I'm sacrificing? Like spending a moment with it and kind of like investigating it.
Yeah, so doing some self-reflection, like what's difficult about this choice? What's making it so hard to choose? What would have to happen in order for me to choose? Like there's lots of ways you can go with that.
Because I mean like let's take like to just really hit home this idea that choosing does not mean sacrifice, let's take a shopping spree. If you were to go shopping, you buy whatever you want. You're still going to choose things.
Yeah.
Like, there are going to be some things that just don't call to you. Or, like...
yeah, I'm just going to blindly be like, like all the things.
Or, like, shirts that don't... like, clothes that don't fit. Like, you're going to pick your size.
Yeah.
And you're not going to feel like you left things behind. You're not going to be like, damn it, I wish I bought those, like, double extra smalls. You know? Like, and... no tea, no shade to you double XSs out there. It's just we don't fit in those, so that's what I picked.
So we wouldn't buy them.
I personally would not feel like I left anything behind.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I'm getting at is like choosing is fine. It doesn't mean sacrifice.
Absolutely. I agree.
So on that note of brilliant insight.
We've been ranting today.
Balance is cool. It's not what you think it is.
Yeah.
And choosing isn't sacrifice.
Yes. Words of wisdom.
That's all you really need
for
to know.
Friday. Yep. Except
Happy Tuesday. And whenever you listen to it. All right. We'll talk with you guys later.
Bye, friends.
Bye.
That wraps up this episode of the Sugar and Spikes podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'd also like to thank Forget the Whale for use of their song Move Along as our theme music. If you liked this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and let the whole world know how good this shit is by leaving a review. It would mean so, so, so much. Also, don't forget to get your free stress layer training by going to DesireeW.com and clicking on Slay Your Stress. You'll also find a link to that in the show notes below. Till next time. And remember to stay unavailable for fuckery.